Well, hello everyone in P5 at Haddington Primary School. Hello, my name is Tim Porteous and I'm a storyteller. And one of your teachers, Miss Coates, contacted me and says, will you tell a story? And she had a particular story that she wanted me to tell you. So I agreed that I would tell you the story. Is that okay with you? So hope you're sitting comfortably. You can see me and hear me okay. And are you ready for the story? Now this story is in fact very old. We know that because there's a written record of this story being told to James V of Scotland when he was a wee boy. Now that's all the way back into the 1500s, the 16th century. And James V, when he grew up, became the father of Mary, Queen of Scots. But when he was a wee boy, he loved stories. And this was one of the stories he loved. And the story is called The Red Etin. And so the story itself is at least 500 years old. And so the time that the story took place is even older than that. We go all the way back, more than 1,000 years, into the dark mist of Scottish history, when there was a king called King Malcolm. Now in the kingdom there were two houses very close together, and in each house lived two separate families, but they were close neighbours and very close friends. In one house lived a mother and her two sons, and in the other house lived another mother and her son. And the three boys, the two brothers and the boy from the other house who was called Jack, they were very good friends. But one day, the older brother from the house with two brothers decided it was time he set off to try and find his destiny. They were very, very poor. Both families were terribly poor. And so the older brother said to his mother, Mother, I think I better be ganging awa now and finding out what life has for me out there. Aye, she said, that's a good idea. Why don't you gang down to the burn and collect a wee bit of water, and I'll make you a nice tasty cake. And so he took the bucket and he went down to the river and he filled it with water and up he went, but he didn't notice that there was a hole in the bucket, so a lot of the water just dribbled away, and by the time he got home, well, the bucket was less than half full, so the mixture for the cake was much less than it could have been. And his mother made a much smaller cake than she'd hoped that she could make. And she looked at him and she said, "Och, it's smaller than I thought it would be." She said, "I'll tell you what, if you share it with me, I'll give you an extra blessing as you go." But the older son, he looked at it and he thought, "No, Mum, I'm going to need all this cake because I'm the one that's going on a journey." So he didn't share it with his mother. Well, off he set with his mother's cake and his wee bag, and he set off on the path to the Lammermuir Hills. And as he started to reach the edge of the Lammermuir Hills, he got hungry, and so he sat by a bridge and he took out the cake and he started to eat it. And just as he was beginning to eat the cake, an old woman went walking by. "Oh, that looks like an awfully lovely cake, son," said the old woman. "I'm fair famished myself. Would there be any way that you might give me just a wee bit of that cake?" Well, the old brother looked at the old woman and he could tell that she was hungry and very poor, but you know what? He thought, nah, This is my cake. I'm keeping it all to myself. So he finished it, and the old woman went on her way. Well, as the older brother continued his journey into the Lammermuirs, he saw a strange sight. Well, actually, he heard something before he saw it. What he heard was ba 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 ba. Can you guess what it was? Sheep. I mean, it wasn't just a few sheep. It wasn't just a lot of sheep. It was loads and loads of sheep on the hillside. I mean, hundreds of them. He'd never seen so many sheep in all his life, and he wondered, where did all these sheep come from? And there, sitting on a rock, there was a shepherd kind of looking over the sheep. And so the older brother went up to the shepherd and said, "Oh my goodness," he said, "who owns all of these sheep? Whoever it is must be very rich." "Oh," said the shepherd, "no," he says, "these sheep have been stolen." "Stolen?" "Aye." "Stolen by who?" "Shh. Keep your voice down." "Stolen by the Red Etin." "The Red Etin?" "Aye." "Who's that? Do you know Ken about the Red Etin? No?" "He's got very good hearing." "Be quiet." "He's got good hearing?" "Aye." "He's got 6 ears." "6 ears?" "Aye, because he's got 3 heads. He's a 3-headed giant monster." "Really?" "Aye." "Shh." Well, needless to say, the older brother didn't really believe this, but you have to say he'd never seen so many sheep in all his life. And so he said, "Okay." So he waved, he said, "Thank you, shepherd." And off he went. And then when he continued his journey, he came across another strange sight. Well, this time it wasn't sheep. It was goats. Hundreds and hundreds of goats, just like there had been of the sheep. There, sitting on another rock by the goats, was a goat herd. And he went up to the goat herd and he goes, Who do all these goats belong to?" And the goat herd looked at him and said, "Shh. They've been stolen, and my job is to look after them." "Oh, don't tell me it's the Red Etin, is it?" "Shh. Aye, it's the Red Etin. Whatever you do, keep your voice down. He's got very good hearing." "Aye, I know. He's got 6 ears, hasn't he? Because he's got 3 heads." "Aye." "Be careful," said the goat herd. "If you continue on this path, the next creatures that you see, well, they'll be dangerous. They belong to the Red Etin himself." "Really?" "Aye." "So what are these creatures? Sheep or goats?" "No. Cattle, cows." "Ah," said the older brother, "I'm not afraid of cows. I come from a farm." "No," said the goat herd, "these are not normal cows. They've got twa heads. They've got 2 heads." "Twa heads?" "Aye. And on each head they have 4 horns, which gives them 8 horns. Twa-headed, 8-horned cattle." "Aye. Be careful. If they see you, they'll come for you." Now, the older brother was beginning to wonder, and it was beginning to get a wee bit dark. The sun was beginning to set, and he was going to have to find a place to rest his head. So he continued on his journey. as he went over the crest of the next hill, he heard the noise of cattle. But it was an unusual noise. And there he saw them, a large herd of cattle. And they did have twa heads, and on each head there were 4 horns. He'd never seen such a thing. But then one of them spotted him and started to charge him. And so he had to run as fast as he possibly could. He ran as fast as he'd ever run in his entire life. And when he looked behind, he saw the ferocious creature running after him. And he ran this way and he ran that way. And he managed to scramble underneath a bush. And then in front of him, he could just see a castle. And he thought, oh, thank goodness, a safe place where these terrible creatures will not get me. And he scrambled over some rocks, and fortunately the 2-headed bull didn't see him, and he managed to get to the door of the castle, and he knocked on the door. Well, he waited for a few moments, and the door opened.
What do you want?
Said an old lady. Oh, said the older brother. Thank goodness, he said. It's getting dark and I'm travelling. I'm trying to find fortune. Unfortunately, I came across these rather unusual creatures, but now that I've come to your door, I was wondering if I could perhaps get a little bit of bite to eat and perhaps have a place to rest my head. Oh, what are you doing here, son? Said the old woman. Oh my goodness, it's come in, quick, quick, quick. And she closed the door and she took him into the kitchen, and there was a nice warm fire. She said, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you here? Well, said the older brother, I was on my journey, and I came across these huge flock of sheep and then goats and then these 2-headed cattle. And the shepherd and the goat herd told me about the red Etin, and I didn't believe them at first, but now I think it might be true, so I need somewhere to hide. No, she said. This is the Red Etin's castle. This is where he lives. Oh, and he's going to be home any minute now. Oh, and they heard the footsteps of the Red Etin coming in. Quick, she said, you've got to hide. And so very quickly she opened the wee door of a cupboard in the kitchen and she put him in there. And she said, whatever you do, don't make a sound, because the Red Etin has got very good hearing. Because, I know he's got 3 heads and so 6 ears. Aye, but he's also got 3 noses. So he's got an exceptionally good sense of smell. Try not to breathe. Try not to breathe. Well, let's go. Here he comes. She closed the door. And in the darkness of his wee cupboard, the older brother listened as Red Etin entered the kitchen. Snook butt, snook Ben. I smell the scent of an earthly man. Be he alive or be he dead, his heart shall make jam for my breed. But where is he? Well, the Red Etin sniffed about. He could smell the older brother, but he wasn't quite sure where he was. And so he used his 6 ears to listen. Well, the older brother was doing his best to not breathe, but he was terrified, and he couldn't stop his heart from beating. And the Red Etin heard his heart beat in the